sad note, at least 9 people have been allegedly killed in Israeli airstrikes on the town of Aitu in the northern part of Lebanon, just as the Lebanese Red Cross reports that 18 people were killed. Authorities say there's the first time that Israel has targeted the Christian-majority northern region in the year of hostilities. There's been no comments from Israel on this matter. In the meantime, the Lebanese Health Ministry says that 51 people were killed by Israeli airstrikes across the country on Sunday. Hezbollah says that the fighters were engaged in violent clashes with Israeli forces in the town of Aita al-Shaab in northern Lebanon. According to the Iranian-backed group, Hezbollah is engaged in clashes with various types of machine guns, rockets, and artillery shells. It says that fighters had targeted an Israeli troop carrier with a guided missile, killing or injuring those inside of it. There's been no word from the IDF regarding this attack. In the meantime, the Israeli military has admitted a drone attack carried out by Hezbollah on an army base adjacent to Binyamina in northern Israel killed 4 soldiers and 7 others were severely wounded. The attack happened on Sunday. Over 60 people were reportedly wounded in the town. Head of Israel's MDA ambulance service says the medics treated around 70 casualties from the scene of that incident.
We are now at Ramot Menashe area where a drone has hit and caused a multi-casualty incident. Magen David Adom team, dozens of ambulances, mobile intensive care units, and paramedics arrived at the scene, and together with additional medical folks has treated around 70 casualties.
Following that attack, the Israeli army has released a video showing head of the army and the country's defense minister visiting the army base that was struck by Hezbollah. The military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said in a televised statement from the site that the incident is being investigated. That conflict between Israel and Hezbollah resumed a year ago when the Iranian-backed group began firing rockets at Israeli positions in support of Hamas at the start of the Gaza war and has now sharply escalated in recent weeks. Let's bring in VOA's Ricky Rossing in Tel Aviv to tell us more. Hello, Ricky. It's good to have you on The World Today. How did the strikes happen on the army base without the knowledge of the Israeli army? As we know, it came to them as a huge shock.
They knew all about the drone because there were helicopters and planes that were tracking it from the time that it came into Israeli airspace from over the sea. And then they apparently lost track of it. The army assumes because it flew too low to be discovered. Parents of the soldiers, the many wounded at the base, are questioning why no alarm was sounded. Could have saved their son's lives when the army, in fact, knew of the presence of the.
But Ricky, would anyone say they can attribute this to a lapse in Israeli intelligence agency? Shouldn't they be more aware of things happening around?
No, it was probably due to human error that the alarms were not sounded in the whole area that the drone was flying through. At least in the place where the Air Force lost sight of the drone, should have triggered alarms throughout the area.
But Hezbollah considers this actually like a win for the group. Is this an attack Israel intends to retaliate?
Well, Hezbollah is using this attack, obviously, to show that while they have been weakened by the exploding pagers that killed and wounded many of their operatives a month ago, and the assassination of their leader, Nasrallah, and many of the highest Hezbollah military commanders, they're by no means they're not willing to concede that they still have plenty of remaining rockets and launchers and drones and especially intelligence to know exactly what they are targeting. And Israel the army announced that they are going to wipe out Hezbollah's drone abilities after this attack.
But beyond that, I mean, Lebanese health officials have said that there were more casualties than usual on Sunday with more Israeli strikes. Can the army still justify its killing of Hezbollah militants while civilian casualty figures are still going up?
So there was announcement of an airstrike in the northern part of Lebanon, in a Christian area actually, where Hezbollah Shiite Muslims do not operate from. So it's hard to understand why Israel would be targeting such an area. But the Israeli response, the army's response to the condemnation of its actions and its causing rising civilian casualties is similar to their response to the condemnation of their Gaza operations, which is that Hezbollah operates using civilians and civilian buildings like homes, hospitals, mosques, and even the United Nations bases as human shields for hiding its rocket launchers, its armaments, its fighters, and therefore it's permitted, according to international military law, for Israel to attack these places.
Now, speaking of which, I mean, there's still no word on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's intention towards Iran. Is that still in the picture?
I think they're waiting for some kind of confirmation from the American administration about what would be permitted, in a sense, by President Biden for the Israeli reaction. They're also waiting for the arrival of an advanced air defense system that the U.S. promised to send in the face of an Iranian counterattack, which would surely come after the Israelis retaliated for the last Iranian attack 2 weeks ago.
Now, talk to us, before I will let you go, about the U.S. support announced yesterday and how that might actually give Israel the advantage in this war.
It's supposedly something that Israel does not have the capacity in the armaments that it already has, the defensive systems. It's because it's a very advanced system that is similar to the Patriot anti-aircraft and anti-missile defense system. And the U.S. is sending 100 soldiers, American soldiers, to operate it because the Israelis don't even know how to operate such an advanced system. And it's said to require each battery is so complicated, it requires 95 soldiers for each battery to operate it. So the American soldiers will be sent to take care of that once Israel does its retaliation against Iran, and would be expecting an Iranian counterattack.
All right. Thank you very much, VOA's Ricky Russen. Thank you for your time on The World Today.
Thank you.
In the meantime, hundreds of displaced people in Lebanon are trying to cross the border into Syria as they flee Israeli airstrikes in their country, according to the Lebanese Disaster Management Unit. As of Saturday, October the 12th, 2024, 320,184 Syrian citizens and 117,727 Lebanese citizens have made that crossing. Lebanese Transport Minister Ali Hamei says that an Israeli strike on October the 4th near Lebanon's Mansar border crossing with Syria cut off a road used by hundreds of thousands of people to flee. Mr. Hamei says the strike hits inside Lebanese territory near the border crossing, creating a 4-meter wide crater. Many of the Syrian citizens leaving Lebanon had sought refuge and fled the war and a security crackdown after the onset of Syrian civil war back in 2011. And happening today, Israeli ambulances and firefighters have rushed to northern Israel town of Carmel, and that's after Hezbollah launched a rocket barrage into Israel. Firefighters were seen struggling to extinguish a car that caught fire in the middle of the street as a result of that attack. While medics treated one lightly wounded woman, several anxiety patients. Israel Ambulances Service MDA says that an Israeli army statement also says approximately 15 projectiles were identified crossing from Lebanon into Israeli territory. The European Union's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell has declared unacceptable Israel's attack on the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon. The attack came shortly after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's call on the UN to leave areas in Lebanon where Hezbollah fighters are known to operate. The European Union countries, led by Italy, France, and Spain, have thousands of troops in the 10,000-strong peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon, which has said it had repeatedly come under attack from Israeli forces in recent days.
Yesterday night, finally, after hours of discussion, we agreed on a 27 statement supporting UNIFIL. The 27 members agreed on asking Israel to stop attacking UNIFIL. Many European members are participating in this mission. Their work is very important. It's completely unacceptable attacking United Nations troops. It's quite evident that we should be against Israel's attacks against UNIFIL, especially because our soldiers are there. Many European soldiers are there. So I would appreciate if member state could reach an agreement on that quicker.
We have reached out to our Israeli friend to make our position very clear. No, they will not withdraw. No, yes, they will continue to fulfill their mandate. And yes, we demand on each and every party to respect this mandate and respect the security and safety of our blue helmets, which has to be ensured at each and every occasion.
In the meantime, the head of the UN Refugee Agency has warned the displacement crisis in Lebanon and Sudan will worsen, but says the tighter border measures were not the solution, calling them ineffective and sometimes unlawful. Addressing more than 100 diplomats and ministers in Geneva at the UNHCR's annual meeting, Filippo Grandi said that an unprecedented 123 million people are now displaced around the world by conflict, persecution, poverty, and climate change. Without naming countries, Grandi said that in initiatives to outsource, externalize, or even suspend asylum schemes were in breach of international law and offered countries help in finding fair, fast, and lawful asylum schemes. Western governments are under growing domestic pressure to get tougher on asylum seekers, and Grandi has previously criticized the plan by former British government to transfer them to Rwanda.
Against the backdrop of crisis in the Middle East, it would be easy, and perhaps it is tempting, to become cynical about multilateralism, to turn inwards. But cynicism and isolation are not luxuries that refugees can afford. There are 123 million refugees and displaced people today. Their plight demands solutions, and the only way to achieve solutions is by working together. You might then ask, what can be done? For a start, do not focus only on your borders. By the time refugees and migrants reach them, governments are under political pressure to make reactive decisions. Reflexively, they focus on controls, on stopping people from moving, on scheme to outsource, externalize, or even suspend asylum that breach their international legal obligations and, frankly, that are ineffective. Instead, look upstream. Look at the root causes in the countries of origin. Look at opportunities in countries of transit to access protection, including legal stay and regularization programs, which must be vastly expanded with the support of development partners. Create more legal pathways, resettlement or family reunification, among many others, so that fewer people embark on dangerous journeys. Uncertainty clouds the lives of ordinary civilians in Lebanon today. Surely, if airstrikes continue, many more will be displaced and some will also decide to move on to other countries. Many have already decided to cross the Syrian border, and Syria has opened the doors to all those fleeing Lebanon. Both Lebanese refugees and Syrian returnees in Syria need immediate relief assistance. The funding appeal launched in Damascus last week, like the one issued for Lebanon a few days earlier, require urgent contributions.
We're hearing from Saudi Arabia, which has this morning announced plans to send between 60 and 80 tons of humanitarian aid to Lebanon on a daily basis. According to the spokesperson from the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center, the kingdom's objective is to save lives, preserve the lives of those who have fled, and improve the quality of life of internally displaced people of Lebanon.
Our objective is to save lives. After that, to preserve the lives of those who fled, and also to improve the quality of life of those IDPs actually fled the south, from the south and Lebanon and other areas. This campaign will continue. This air bridge will not stop as we are directed, and there will be no limit for our aids that go into Lebanon. It's an average of either one airplane or two airplanes. We're talking about between 60 to 80 tons of aids going on daily basis.
Welcome back. In the early hours of today, an Israeli airstrike killed 3 people, wounding 40 others when it hit some tents of displaced Palestinians inside Al-Aqsa Hospital in the central Gaza Strip city of Deir al-Balah, where 1 million people were sheltering. The Israeli military said it struck militants operating from a command center inside the compound, accusing Hamas of using civilian facilities such as hospitals for military purposes, which Hamas already denies. The escalation in northern Gaza has taken place alongside a huge Israeli air assault and the ground campaign on a separate front in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, which, like Hamas, is an ally of Iran. Palestinian and United Nations officials have said that there were no safe areas in Gaza. They have also voiced concerns about the severe shortage of food, fuel, and medical supplies in northern Gaza and said there is a risk of famine there. The second phase of a polio vaccination campaign started today in central Gaza before moving to the south and then later to the north. The second dose of polio vaccine was being administered in addition to vitamin A to protect children against the spread of epidemics and diseases, according to the World Health Organization. The first round of vaccinations were undertaken last month after a baby was partially paralyzed by the type 2 polio virus in August, the first such case in the territory in 25 years. The WHO has said the campaign aims to reach about 590,000 children under the age of 10 across the Gaza Strip in less than 2 weeks as part of the second round of vaccination campaigns.